Hello and welcome to Free Kupo Nuts, a weekly podcast where three gamers get together and talk about all sorts of things, but mostly Final Fantasy XIV. My name is Alden, and with me I have my very good friends Nombly and Adara. We each compiled a list of our favorite and least favorite boss fights within Final Fantasy XIV. Before we get started, hey Nombly and Adara, how you guys doing today?
I'm fine. It's raining outside, so it's kind of calming. But
Okay.
yeah, it's pretty good. Adara?
I'm not too bad, and thank you, Nombly, for forecasting my future weather. Uh,
Oh,
we
Nombly.
we live about 4 hours apart in the same
Okay.
sort of jet stream, so whenever Nombly gets weather, I get it later the same day.
How about you,
Well,
Alden?
that's.
You all right?
I've tired, been working a little too hard lately, but you know how that goes. So,
Yeah.
all right. In any case, let's get started.
Alden, why don't you tell us about some of your favorite boss fights?
All right. Well, while some of my favorites might be more in the raid tier, so like Alexander, some of the Omega stuff, one of my absolute favorites from Alexander was actually Cruise Chaser. Cruise
Okay.
Chaser normal, not Savage
Okay.
specifically.
Hmm.
Um, it was just a neat fight, you know. It was just a neat fight to do because we were standing outside of the core, and it was even like more enlightening, especially when you did Alexander Prime, where you had the time mechanic and you sort of went back in time to sort of
Hmm.
like stop, Alexander Prime. Like that whole arena was just cool to do, and of course the music, it's like stupidly addicting. Forward and back, like who thought that would be a good song to make, and it actually works so well, you
Yeah.
know. It was
Yeah.
such an incredible fight to do.
Is that also the first fight that had like an ATB thing?
Actually, yeah, it was. And I remember the developers even saying like, "Oh, what should we do or how should we implement that?" And they just thought it'd just be easier for them to just push a button, any button, versus like a combination of buttons, which I think is what they initially tried to implement with that specific
Mm.
fight. And even the test team were like, "Don't do that. Just make it a button."
Yeah.
So they introduced a lot of interesting new mechanics, and just the fight itself was pretty awesome. I loved it. What about you, Adar? What was a favorite fight of yours?
One of my favorite fights is actually a newer one, and it's funny because I'm sure there are lots of people who say this is an awful fight, but I really love the Rofokale fight in Rabanastre.
Okay.
Third boss, right?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's the boss after Hashmal, so you finally get through the insanity, which is the Hashmal fight, and you run through all the canals and the aqueducts to get into the actual fortress.
Hmm.
And so it's really cool because you come out of the aqueducts and you get to this stage that is illuminated by sunlight from somewhere far, far up above.
Mm-hmm.
And then you fight this giant dude on a chariot. And I love the arena awareness mechanics.
Hmm.
You have to be paying attention to where Rofakal is for when he does the trample mechanic, which is the figure eight,
Mm-hmm.
as well as just even the mechanic where he ends up covering part of the room with a ground AoE. Like you just have to pay attention. But it's also a very satisfying fight if you're melee because there, other than transition phases or when he does the trample, there's actually not a lot of downtime.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So it becomes a lot of fun of dodging other people and doing these active mechanics, and it can be frustrating to do in a group full of pugs who maybe don't know what they're doing, but it's my favorite
Mm-hmm.
fight of the four in that one.
Yeah, do not stand in the magic circle. You click on the magic circle.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
too.
It always
Or
kills me.
don't stay at the Super 8 is how I
Hmm.
explain the remember how to do the trample mechanic.
Yep. What about you, Namli? What were one of your favorites?
I should probably like prefix this by saying that, I didn't play at all from like 2.1 to 3.4. So a lot of the stuff in there I didn't do on content, and I feel like doing stuff on content kind of makes them pop a little bit more for you.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I could
So
agree to
most
that.
of my stuff is from like either Stormblood or the end of Heavensward, but just specifically the most recent raid, Construct 7, is awesome.
Oh,
Yes.
Yes. Oh my
This is one of
god.
my favorites too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's so like memeable. We were talking about this before with the prime number thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's one of those things where like even like the veteran players, like the people who are raiding like endgame savage, they're like, what's 2 plus 3? Is this a prime number? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, and it rewards you heavily for knowing how the mechanic works. You get damage up if you do it right, and you get damage down if you do it wrong. So it feels good when you do it right, and when you do it wrong, it makes you want to put in the effort to do it right next time.
Mhm.
Yeah, I will admit that for me with that fight, it was difficult getting a higher number, like 7 or 8. And it was
Mm.
like, what, and like make it a multiple of 3. I was like, oh shit, like what's a multiple of 3 if I'm 7? Like, I have to be 9. Like, like I actually had to do
Yeah.
actual math versus like being 1. What's a multiple of 3? 3. Like that being a lower number in that fight does make it a little bit easier, at least from my personal experience. I don't know about what you guys think about that.
I also love like how like the mechanics specifically, if you have that set number already, you don't even need to react.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
It's
Like
nice.
if you get 2 and he says prime number, then you're gold. You don't have to move. You can just keep DPSing.
Yeah, and that is nice. I do.
And also the spinny around thing where everybody dies. There's that meme of someone who's like there's 160 deaths throughout the fight or whatever.
Yeah.
And of course, it seems it's become like a one-up game. Like, I see you're 160 and I give you 210, like or something like that. It's become the thing
Yeah.
of Reddit, and I I have absolutely no idea as far as any of that goes. And well, I mean, another one for me would be kind of going back into like I guess like newer content because, like you
Mhm.
mentioned, you didn't start playing really until like on content around like Heaven's Ward, or sorry, excuse me, Stormblood. You said right. So a lot of it
Well,
was like outdated.
3.4.
Yeah, so a lot of it was like outdated for you almost, or most of it at least.
Yeah.
So for me, I actually, having never played Final Fantasy VI, but still having some experience with Kefka and other games that he's been featured in, like well, I guess the biggest one would be Dissidia, which was
Mhm.
huge fan service. So I love the Kefka normal fight.
Mm.
Like, absolutely. I love
Mhm.
the laugh. I just love just the fight mechanics alone, him being like a trickster. His tank buster was throwing pots and pans upon the tank. Like, what is this boss even? it, and of course, they also incorporated the God Tower, with the Warring Triad. And like I said, it was just an amazing fight, all in all. And I do specify Kefka normal because I have a love-hate relationship with Kefka Savage.
Mhm.
I don't mean God Kefka. I mean Kefka, or Kefaust, as some of the raiders do call him, and I'm just like, I hate it. I hate him so much. I prefer the normal fight, just to like it through and through. I like the normal fight better, but
Mhm.
that's just me. I don't know about you guys. I mean,
That
what other
fight
like?
was
Hmm?
that fight was definitely like one of those things where it rewarded players for reading the quest text as well,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I think it's Nero. Nero tells you like specifically like this guy's a trickster. He's going to trick you. He's going to make you do things opposite to what you normally do, type of thing. And like if you read that text from the quest, you kind of go into that fight knowing, okay, something's gonna happen, like something tricky. And like the first time I saw it and I saw the question marks in the AoE, I'm like, okay, I have to stand in that. Like I understand this right away. And then my friend, who didn't read the quest at all, died. So it was fun.
I've noticed they've been doing that a lot lately with a lot of the quests where they give you like a little bit of like a hint already, preemptively, you know, where they just kind of give you a hint towards what to expect in the upcoming fight, or even during the fight too. I think they even did that in Phantom Train as well, where like, hey, these lights do something, and yeah, so it sort of give you a hint as what each mechanic does. So it
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
It's been a nice introduction, them including like flavor text, if you will. But uh, I don't know. I mean, what about you, Nami? What other like uh, recent fights have you like really been enjoying or have enjoyed?
I mean, I'd say the most recent fight that I've been enjoying has been Tsukuyomi. She's only been out for like 2 weeks, and I'm at 80 totems, but still no doggo.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't feel as bad as like there was another person that I picked up in a pug, and they had 160 totems at the end of their week, and they still didn't have a dog.
I
So I'm
still can't
like,
imagine those people who do that. Like they're like, oh, they post it on Reddit too, as though it's supposed to be. Well, I mean, it's an accomplishment in its own, sure, but I mean to say like, it took me like 150 clears, but I got it. I'm just like, why didn't you stop?
yeah. Wouldn't you
Like,
stop at 99 and wait for the purchasable to become a thing in a bit?
yeah,
yeah,
like,
I
there-
think I think what someone said in Pug in regards to that was like, I've already put in 100 attempts trying to farm this. Like I want it now. Like
Yeah.
well,
so I mean, me personally, when I hit 99, I'm never going in there unless I'm helping someone else clear or someone else I know wants to do a farm. Like I
right.
won't actively farm it anymore once I hit 99.
Well,
But
absolutely, yeah.
apart from like the doggo, like the fight is really visually nice. Like there's like three pretty heavy transitions throughout the fight,
Hmm.
and it tests the healers. Most of my farms have actually been a solo heal, where it's like one white mage and 5 DPS and 2 tanks, which have been really fun because like it allowed me to practice using mana shift a lot more, which I usually let my raid healer or my raid black mage Kiki take over mana shifts. So it's been nice to practice that, and I don't know, it's a great fight. Like it's a lot of AOE, and it's got a decent ad phase. It's given me like an eye opening to how OP black mage is right now.
Oh yeah.
Uh, but yeah, you guys, I know you farmed. You got the doggo already, don't you, Alden?
Yes, and after hearing what you just said in your encounter with another person, I don't even want to say how
Oh,
long it took me. I feel bad almost. I mean, even though I'm like no less deserving than anyone else, but I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, I
I mean, on one of my farms, one of the people was like, "This was my third clear, and I won the dog," and I'm like, "I'll kill you."
okay, well, I mean, I wasn't that bad, thankfully. It was the 14th clear. I checked the totems, and I'm pretty sure it was the same thing for the Biako dog as well. It was like clear number 16 or something along those lines, and I was like, and done.
I don't have a single Stormblood primal mount yet at all.
Mm.
Okay.
But you do have clears on them, right?
Other than Tsukiyomi, I
Yeah.
haven't
Okay.
done Tsukiyomi EX yet. No, but
Well, it's funny too because now that well, with this patch, this recent patch 4.3, they let you buy the Shinryu dog, and they also upped the drop rate for it. And
Yeah.
I was farming that a lot recently, and I think it was um, my 58th or 68th clear or something along those lines, somewhere around there, somewhere around that number. I don't know the exact number of how many times I'd cleared, but yeah, I got the dog eventually, or like a 92 or something like that. And I was like, okay, yay, done. And
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, I'm okay to farm it that much, where it's like an okay number. You know what I mean? Uh, but for the longest time, I completely refused to farm Shinryu because people were just incapable of doing that fight for whatever reason. And now I don't
Yeah,
know what it is. I think it's either the item level
fearing it.
increase
I'm fearing
or
it. I need to farm it. I've only got one clear on Shinryu X,
yeah, we
and
did our clear together.
yeah.
it's not that bad as you would think. It is a lot better than what it was. I will admit. Like, trust me, I understand 100% where your fear is coming from, and but no, absolutely. Like, I understand, like, for sure where your fear is coming from. But I mean, I don't know. Other than that, I mean, Adara, what about you? Like, I know that you took a break just before Heavensward came out, and like you came back like somewhere a few months after or whenever. Um, what are some other primals for you there, or for boss fights in general? Excuse me, that were good for you?
It's funny because all of my favorite boss fights are new fights.
Oh.
Like,
Mhm.
because I also really love 06S, so Demon Shardnook.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great fight.
It's a great fight in terms of uptime. Like, just my little ego stroke moment is like I have really good DPS on that fight because I don't have to move too often.
And it's a striking dummy.
Yeah, right. Like, as long as you've got really good team, so you're all doing the mechanics properly, like I don't even have to go too far for the pain tethers.
Right.
And it just feels really satisfying when everybody that's what I call like a synchronized swimming fight.
Yeah.
When everybody knows their role and moves smoothly, it's
Mhm.
such a good fight.
He's omnidirectional too, isn't he?
Yes, he
Yes.
is.
The first,
Yeah.
him and Phantom Train are both Omni, which is
That's
Nice.
awesome.
so nice.
Well, I think the only drawback you might actually say, beside him being a dummy fight, is when you get marked with the rocks and you need to, fuck off and
Yeah,
run
but even
away.
then, like I don't lose all that much uptime because usually I've got dots up or whatever, so it's just a very quick jog out and then fire tackle
Go
back
back
in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say tackle back in, shoulder tackle. Yeah, that's
It's super good for Red Mage too.
mhm. Yep.
Yeah. And you get to be Bob Ross a little bit.
Only in Savage though, because in normal it's just the one. It's black color, right?
I
It's
mean,
black, right?
you're still painting though.
But with one color, and black's actually is black a color or is black the
I
absence?
mean, okay,
Actually,
there's an episode of Bob Ross where because there's somebody that watches the show who's colorblind, he does a painting all in black and white to be like, you don't need to use color to make a beautiful painting.
Oh,
So
okay, yeah, like that. Okay, you're right. You're right. That's true. You're right. That is correct. I never would question the great Bob Ross. Excuse me, but
but my other favorite boss fight right now is Susano.
yeah, definitely.
Especially extreme.
He's one of my favorites too.
I can see why they kind of debuted him, like, or put him on a pedestal for Stormblood. Like, hey guys, we have this primal. Like, this is one of the boss fights. Like, they put him front and center. Um, absolutely. No, it was a stunning fight.
Especially like tanking that fight, you feel like a badass because
Yeah.
during the phase switch when he brings that sword down and you are literally parrying a 20-foot sword
Mm-hmm.
and it's your strength that keeps the party alive.
And that kind of
That's
calls
true.
back to what Nomly referred to earlier, where Cruise Tracer was the first one to do the active time maneuver. Is that what it's called, or
Yeah.
whatever? Whatever. But a little bit differently because you're like you're smashing the button so that you don't go down to like zero.
Mhm.
But no, yeah, like that was an incredible transition. Absolutely, like you just feel so like epic, like guarding his sword, saving the entire party while they're like trying to whittle away at at the sword so it doesn't do as much damage or
Yeah.
something like that. No, it was great. That was a great encounter. Like absolutely loved it, like through and
Yeah.
through.
Susano
And
is basically like the embodiment of revelry as like he's like the true sense of the word. Like he's having fun throughout this whole fight, you can tell. He's like, "Oh, that was a memorable dance indeed at the end." And it's like, "Yeah, it was. That was really fun,
He's
right?"
laughing.
Like,
He's like, bah, ha, ha, what? Yeah, like you said, he's just like, oh,
yeah.
that was great. I was just like, yeah, man, let's do it again.
the learning curve between normal and EX isn't insane either.
Mhm.
Which was nice.
Yeah, his music is also really great, and in terms of like the transition when it goes from like the middle and the water comes up all around you and the music just slows down into this new song, and even though it's like the same kind of beat, but it's got that like dangerous hype behind it even though it's going slowly. It
A
just
little more
feels really
intensity.
good. Yeah, it's a greatly like it's like a theater piece even. Like it's so good.
Yeah.
Now, one of my other favorites, the from Stormblood, and not unfortunately, this was an interesting thing that I remember reading about someone on Reddit complaining about the fact that these optional forms. So X-Death turns into Neo X-Death, Kefka and Savage turns into God Kefka. Spoiler alert, not that it's a spoiler at this point anymore.
Yeah, it's
It's
been
not.
6 months or whatever.
Or it's 3
Mhm.
months for Kefka. But yeah, no, like a lot of
Yeah.
people were complaining. They said it was not fair that I don't want to play Savage, but I want to like fight God Kefka. in normal, and Neo X Death in normal, and it's like maybe that's why they implemented that. Like
That's kind of your reward though for doing Savage is
a
seeing
little bit,
content. Yeah.
but I still feel the plight of people who physically do not have the time to do it. Like they can't make the schedule, like to have a static. And while I do have mixed feelings about it for personal reasons that don't really need to get delved into, but as a whole, the fight I love Neo X Death. The arena is gorgeous. The music, even though again I didn't really play much of five, obviously to the point to its conclusion, I love Neo X Death's battle music a little bit more than I like God Kefka's.
Mhm.
While I will say that God Kefka is actually a little bit easier, even though they said that they would give us harder fights, whatever. His model was amazing. It was gorgeous. They did such a great job putting him into 14. The fight's great. Adara would love it because he's omnidirectional.
Yeah.
Because you can just like I'm just gonna wail on you. Yeah, no, it's great. It was just a great fight. For for them to end that tier. While the rest of the fights were maybe not the greatest, but they ended it strong. I feel. I don't know. Um, what about you, Nomley? Were there any other ones from Stormblood that you particularly liked?
From Stormbud, I love Guardian, but there was also one other one from Heaven's Word I really liked. Baelsar's Wall, the Griffin, the final fight.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Do you
it's
actually love him for the fight, or do you love him for the meme? Sloppy. Like, do you?
both,
Which both?
both, both.
Okay. I mean, oh God,
Good
no, I
meme.
love how meme that fight became,
Yeah.
and I'm not gonna lie. Like, did any of you clock Ilberd at all?
What do you mean? Him being the Griffin?
Yeah, anyone? Like, did
I
you expect that? Because no, because I'm not sure if it was before that patch. Actually, no, it might have been. It was. There's 3.4 where you actually talk to him, and he's like, "Yeah, you've actually saved me before." And I'm just like, and of course, I'm immediately like just going down the list of people. I'm
save this guy, save this guy, save this guy. Who are you?
like yeah, exactly. I'm like, who could he be? Who is it? No, I never thought Ilberd at all because he's crazy,
It was
But I
It was a
mean,
great closing fight for the patch. Like it
Mhm.
had a lot of different mechanics, and even though it was just like a dungeon fight, and it was a good dungeon fight. Like it had a focus mechanic for like coloring the healers,
oh
and
dear.
then you know it had like you have to create a safe spot, and then you had the tank buster, and you
Hmm.
had room wide cleaves. Like it was just a very like
It was
it
a very
was I don't
it
want to
was it
say
was
it
a
was
crazy fight, and it
yeah
was a
it
lot
was
going on, and it was a good one. No, I know exactly what you're saying, and I even liked how I don't think they've done this specific thing before, and if they have, I can't recall. The whole thing with them doing the swords coming down, you have to kill one to have a safe spot to not get hit and die.
exactly
Like
yeah
I can't recall them ever doing that before, and that was a nice thing. Me, I've always them loving implementing something new, something different, anything. And yeah, that was something they did, and it's a small thing. It's nothing too grand, but at the same time, it was different. So it was nice. I mean, you mentioned you liked Guardian as well, and while I have mixed feelings about that, uh, I don't know. What about Guardian did you like?
Guardian Savage is kind of my it's kind of the fight that made me go, if I put in enough effort and I put in enough practice and I try hard enough, yes, I can raid if I need to, if I want to.
Hmm.
Like it's a very complicated fight, but not at the same time. It's got variance in it. Like you might not get the same sequence every time, but you have to learn all these sequences. You have to know your placement. You have to
Know the
it's got a
order essentially.
very it's got a very like if you mess up you are dead type of thing going on, and if you're dead everybody else is dead kind of thing.
Yeah, and no, I will admit that while I have very mixed feelings about the fight, it was a good fight for Savage. It was a good fight for the third fight in the tier, for sure. I will absolutely agree upon that. But the only thing for Guardian for me was that I remember hearing a lot of people saying that like how the fact that we are in like, oh, the arena is so ugly. It's so just I'm just like, but the lore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, do you not know where we are? Come on, like, ah, like
Yeah.
this is so significant and meaningful. Like, oh, but it's so ugly. I'm like, that's the point.
Yeah.
um, I mean, yeah, you've played all of 6, right? So you experienced
Yes,
all
I
of that.
played. It was very long ago. I was a kid still, but I did play through it. I kind of want to go through it again if I
Hmm.
can find it like on Steam or something. But it
Right.
was,
No, I know, and I feel like that's sort of what 14 does pretty well. Is it has a lot of like the references, like the subtleties, or like, hey, you kind of want to go back to though it kind of makes you remember about times where you played this game and you loved it and you just want to relive that experience again. So companies like this, like 14, or not even just 14, just whoever, are very good at kind of like poking at your nostalgia, saying like, hey, you remember this? And
yeah, yeah,
they make you love
definitely.
the current thing. Yeah, they make you love the current thing and almost make you want to go back, and it makes you love the current thing even more. So they do very well to pander to that audience. So
And I think this fight is also one of those fights where it shows off Square Enix's prowess when it comes to training you for what's coming type of thing.
yeah.
Hmm.
Because everything before Virus, it's kind of spaced out, and it's it's not so much difficult, but you need to remember. And
Because they start
once
adding
you
the
get to
mechanics on top of
Virus,
each other. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like, and once you get to Virus, that's when stuff starts going crazy. And then you finish Virus, and you're seeing everything you saw from the first half of the fight, but now there's other things happening at the same time. And I
Right.
think it's just really well orchestrated.
Well, I mean it's pretty common for a lot of the Savage fights that we've already know and been introduced to. So, and like I said, it's not really that unheard of, I suppose, for them to do
No,
that.
but like it's just really well done for this fight because, it telegraphs what's going to happen on the back wall. And you have to like tap your head and be like, okay, this is what's happening. I need to react. And I
Right.
just think
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Well, now, even though that might have been a fight that you loved, there are of course fights that we don't particularly, or maybe not so sort of fond of.
That we hate. You're dancing around the word hate.
I
Definitely
don't
dancing
like
around
that
the
word.
word thing.
No, no, no. But seriously, yeah, yeah, fights that we hate, or however you want to put it. What are some fights that you might hate, Adara?
There's actually, this list is fairly short. Most fights, like I can either like I'm either indifferent about, or I can see why they exist because they teach you how to do a thing that you then
Hmm.
need to know later on.
Hmm.
But the final boss of Brayflock's Long Stop Hard.
Okay,
Oh,
which
that's
one was
like
that?
it's
Wait,
like
which
the
one was
buggy with like a face on it that
Yeah,
goes in circles and stuff. Okay, yeah.
that?
yeah. So this fight has sort of three short phases. There's a phase where you are like you're just fighting the boss, so you're just punching a buggy.
Uh-huh.
And then there's a phase where two ads spawn, and you have to kill the ads. And then there's a phase where the arena gets filled with bombs, and you just have to push the bombs out of the middle of the arena to create a safe zone. And you have a very limited time span in which to do this. And then the bombs detonate in 3 sets. And so if you did not clear a safe zone in the middle, you're toast. And they only ever use this mechanic one other time that I can recall, and it's in Keeper of the Lake. But they don't really
Ooh.
teach you anything. And it's
Yeah.
like, so if you have to use an attack to knock it back, and you're expected to know this already.
Apparently,
And if
right.
you and there's no indication that it's back far enough until it just kills you.
Hmm.
It is an impossible fight to do with pugs
Well,
because it's not a dungeon you need to unlock for the MSQ, and so most people who do it just like unlock it, do it once, and forget about it. And then you
right.
Yeah.
come back to it 2 years later, and you don't remember how this fight goes, and so you end up having to do this boss fight 3 or 4 times. You're in this dungeon anyways, just because you're trying to protect a cheese recipe, I think. Like you're trying to save cheese from being stolen by the Goblin Illuminati, and it's just why. It's the whole thing is just Why are we doing this? There have got to be better things for the Warrior of Light to be doing than golfing with bombs to save a cheese recipe.
I don't know, man. I really like cheese. You know, it's a vital diet of the.
Dude, I will buy Bravelock some freaking cheese if I never have to do that fight again.
Well, no, I mean, it's funny you mention it because did you do that fight on content or?
I
Just say that word.
did.
Okay, no, because it's interesting being somebody who started playing the game after Heavensward came out. So that fight was already like old content, like over and done with. And I, of course, unlocked it, and I would constantly do 50 roulette, and that was one of them. That was one of the dungeons I usually liked because it was so easy. But I mean, I can kind of understand playing with the bads and not being because you are right that there's no indication, no way of knowing how you're supposed to do that fight because there's no prior knowledge up until then of like, hey, if you hit this, it'll get knocked back. Never. You're
Mm-hmm.
right. So like that seemed like it does seem like a very odd way to implement that fight. But I mean, I don't know. For me, it's funny that you mentioned the goblins because one of the ones that I'm not particularly fond of, and I never actually got to it in Savage, but it's I'm not gonna mess this up. It's A7 normal, which is quick thinks all thoughts in the Godwalker on the little arena with the four squares in the corners of the different
Oh, the
jails, the
cages.
spikes, yeah, the cages, and of course the cat, and let's not
No, I
forget
love the cat
Indiana.
though.
Oh, who doesn't love the cat? With the meow. No, let's not all forget about the Indiana Jones, death ball of doom. Uh, and
Hmm.
every time they come out, I would just go like softly, dun, 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 just, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But no, there's always been, and this is still kind of true in even with the Omega fights, the third tier, Savage or otherwise, or even a normal, the third tier of any fight, A3, 7, or 11. And I know I mentioned that I loved a Cruise Chaser from A11, but every week for weekly clears, that fight in particular was always the absolute worst. I don't just mean A7. I just mean, A3, A7, A11. Those three fights, and of course, O3 and O7. The third tier is always, I don't know why, but it's always like people struggle with the most. And I don't get it. But in particular, I actually do not like. A7 gave me the biggest headache, even more than A11, doing through pugs.
Hmm.
I hate quick things all thoughts because people are so bad at it, and it's such a dumb fight, and I don't like anything about it at all. Well, okay, except for the cat, but I mean, whatever.
Well, I
um,
mean, when it comes to dumb fights that everyone hates, how about we talk about Keeper of the Lake?
ooh,
Oh, Keeper of the Lake.
So we have the first boss, which is this dumb bird that we have no context for that just drops
that's,
bombs in the arena for what reason?
how did the birds get the cannons? That's what I want to know.
Why,
Like,
why is this a thing? What is happening? Fight
I
is
don't,
dumb.
everything about Keeper of the Fail is just the stupidest thing
Mm.
ever.
And then
Like,
you have the second fight, the Magitech gunship, where all it is him zipping back and forth, leaving fire, and then you kill ads. Why? Why? Why is this a thing?
and the
I don't
funny
want to
thing
do
about
this
that
dungeon.
the funny thing about that fight too is the fact that if you literally or especially now to the point where like we're running this content synced down but like to the highest item level you could possibly be at the time, that particular fight, if your DPS is good enough, he will constantly do that prey mechanic where he's dropping fire puddles of shit
Mm-hmm.
everywhere.
Yeah.
It's a constant, but like because that's a phase by phase thing based on a percentage. And so it's like basically the whole arena is covered in poo and you're just running around like fucking crazy, and it's a dumb fight. No, I will agree. Like that fight is particularly stupid, and I that is probably one of the worst dungeons through and through that I
Yeah.
hate getting in like 50 roulette 50 60 now. But yeah, I 100% agree
And you
that
have the last boss, which is a glorified double ad phase. It's like it's this epic dragon that has history in Final Fantasy,
and you're
and
fighting
it's
his
like
spirit like
you fight his face for a couple seconds, and then you do add phases. Why? This could have been so much cooler.
Now, were the
Mhm.
dragons sleeping? Were they dead? Like,
I
I don't.
don't know.
One interesting thing about that fight that kind of like kind of goes back to what Adara said. This mechanic has never been like mentioned, or there's no indication of how to figure out this mechanic besides just doing it. The dragons need to be a certain distance away from Midgar Stormer.
Yeah,
How do you even know that unless you physically do it? Besides the fact that that's where they are like spawned. If you go any
yeah.
closer to the boss, it's they get like a Vuln up or Vuln down or something. They get
There,
a buff.
there is a tether that you can see when they're
Mhm.
too close or too far, but like you have no context.
You have no indication if that's what you should be doing until you
The
mess it up.
the only thing I think that fight teaches you is the shield
Dodge.
mechanic,
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
because
clickable.
that gets reused.
It does. It does. But other thing is, don't be a caster and learn to dodge. So I guess there's some good to the bad. I mean, I don't know. 50 dungeons for me have always been kind of hit or miss, especially with the bosses. And I'm not so easily bothered, but there are some that have just been particularly irritating. I mean, I don't know, Dar, what about you? Are there any ones for you that you find any sort of irritation on?
If we're gonna talk about glorified ad bosses, I need to call out 2 dungeons for doing the same thing.
Hmm.
Sestasha Hard Mode and Hullbreaker Isle, both their final boss is a Kraken. And you don't fight the boss. Well, okay, in Sestasha Hard Mode, you do hit the Kraken, but
Uh-huh.
basically you just hit tentacles,
Yeah,
and
I
that's
will
it.
say I will say I dislike Hullbreaker more than Sistasha because you
I
can
agree.
you can kind of technically ignore the tentacles, but that's not part of the mechanics. Like you can weaken the boss by like like all of his tentacles go down and that whole thing of like
Hmm.
the Kraken cannot bring his arms up against you. And there's a couple of like 20 seconds of you just beating the
Wailing on
shit
the
out of
boss, yeah.
wailing on the boss. For Hullbreaker Isle, oh no, you need to let the tentacles do their thing, which is usually grab you and toss you. Then they'll go back down and they'll come back up, and then you'll eventually, maybe, who knows, be able to slap the tentacle around a bit until he dies. Or
Yeah, and you don't ever get to actually hit the Kraken. You only deal damage to him by hitting the tentacles, and then eventually you kill enough tentacles, but there's no real indication that you've done enough until the Kraken just gives up.
yeah, and it's
That's it. That's the whole fight. You are slapping his tentacles until he's like, I'm fed up with this. And that's not rewarding.
That's not.
it's not. No, I will 100% agree that it's just like that was it. That was the boss fight. I don't
Mm-hmm.
like I said, dungeon bosses don't really bother me too much, but yeah, that one in particular was definitely annoying. I mean, what about you, Nomly? Were there any other ones that you found that you specifically like a level 50, you know, dungeon or boss? Like, what were ones that you thought that you just weren't too keen on?
So I don't remember which one it is. I think it's the regular Pharaoh Sirius.
Okay, wait, which?
I'm not
Okay,
sure if it's Pharaoh Sirius or Pharaoh Sirius Hard, but
well, what was the boss fight? I can probably tell you either or.
it's that that pirate boss. Like the first one's the pirate.
If
His
it's the
name is
first boss, if it's the
Yon the Unsinkable. I think he's
okay, if it's the
called.
first boss, that was normal. If you had the if it was the one with the dogs, that was normal.
Yeah. Okay. So normal. I don't like that fight. Like, the DPS don't know what's going on, and the tank is new. The ads overwhelm the tank fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Also, the poo stuff on the floor has something to do with his attack or something. The mechanics are all really fuzzy for that fight. And
Yeah.
if you have inexperienced players, the first time you go in, if you have all leaves, it's almost guaranteed a wipe the first time you fight that boss.
Pretty much. Yeah, you're not too far off on that. Yeah, even even right now I'm thinking about it and I know I've done it to the point where I've told other people who were of course, messing it up like what they need to do and I'm pretty sure I just said, focus the ads because that's what's killing us or something like you're not wrong. The mechanics are like, wait, what am I supposed to be doing? And of course it just turns into especially now, considering it's like I said before, where we're synced down, we're at a higher ad level than what we would have initially been if we got the content, new and fresh. Um, kill the ads and kill it till it's dead. Like I don't know. Like it's gotten to the point where you can just practically ignore most of the mechanics, more or less. And
Yeah,
but I will 100% agree. Like that fight is, like you said, stupid because if New Leaf gets in there, everyone is just you know the screwed, pretty much.
yeah. Like I mean, if you have enough DPS, you can just burn it. But like I said, if you have new players who don't know what's going on, it's really bad.
Yeah, and that was a problem that I had with one of my picks, which was Halicarnassus, and I don't know why they reused the name and the lore behind it, and because they used Halicarnassus in Hawkmanor Hard, or however you want to pronounce
Yeah,
Hockey
and that
H.
boss is another one where it's like if people don't know what's going on, you're dead.
Well, that is true, but it's even then. Well, literally, well, to be fair, for that boss fight, it's you need to kill the ads. That's all there is to it. Like
People
that.
never kill the edge. They focus the boss and then you die and they're like, "What happened?" And I'm like,
Well, to kill the ads and not focus, like kill, oh, an ad spawn, let me just ignore it. No, that's not a new concept. So if they're doing that, that's on them. That's not a new thing that they didn't do. The one
yeah,
thing that Halicarnassus did, that for some reason people, even in like week 6 or 7 in Party Finder or not Party Finder, like Pugged Weekly Clear, were messing up were the frickin' tiles. Oh, you're a DPS, stand here, or you're a healer, stand in this marker. Like, these all look familiar. You should know what these are. Like, I will admit that it takes a little bit of time and a little bit of learning to know that, hey, she's about to do ribbit to turn you into a frog, and you need to be a frog.
I get hit by that every time. I've never done the savage mode, but normal mode, I go into my opener, I stop looking at her, and then I'm a frog. And I'm just like, every time, every
Savage mode, if you're going through Party Finder, I will say that that fight is, or even with a static, that fight to progress was more difficult,
time.
if you
Okay.
can believe it.
No, I
Guardian
believe
is
it.
Guardian's pretty difficult because, like you said, the most difficult part is the fact that whatever his initial load is what his rotation will be. Even me, like I still get like like I have no idea which one it is, and I literally have a visual tool. Like, okay, which all I have to do is remember the initial load and just follow that train, like just follow that route, and it's easier for me to do it that way. But no, for Halicarnassus, there's so much going on. There's like a lot of like things to like know and do versus Guardian. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
it is not a fight on Savage or normal that I am too particularly keen on. Normal people are just, I don't know. It's Pug, so you take it with a grain of salt or however you want to put it. But in Savage, it is quite possibly one of the most frustrating fights, even with the static, to sort of progress through. Even with a good static. I mean, when the content first came out, they one shot like O1 and O2 like instantly. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But
Oh
O3
one
they
was
sort of hit the
very
wall.
so oh one was very kind of clear cut once you
Oh,
saw it.
absolutely.
I mean,
And
I died a
O2
couple
was as
times to it,
well.
but I never did savage.
When O2 was as well, O1 and O2 were pretty like clear cut. Like the mechanics were they were
The same
very
thing
easy.
every time. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, both a little bit of a variance, but that's neither here nor there. The point is that O3S was just a fight that I've just never been a fan of. Even to this day, even running with people that I am like who are aware of the fight or having to learn someone else through it, I'm just like, I'd rather we didn't do O3. I don't want to do the Carnassus again. Please don't make me do that fight. Just bad times
Hmm.
all around. I don't know. Adar, that was you said you didn't have anything else for you, right? That was you like that you hadn't have any other like fights you weren't too particularly keen on.
Yeah, I mean, there's some like entire dungeons that I could just hit or miss, but there's not a lot of like single boss fights that make me go, "Oh God,
Ugh.
why?"
Yeah, right. Like this boss, but like the rest
Mhm.
of the dungeon's fine, but this boss, no, yeah. Well, what about you, Nom? Like, what about were there any dungeons that you were like this boss, but the rest of the dungeon was okay?
I think the last kind of like nitpick I have for bosses and dungeons or raids would probably be Yojimbo from Kugane Castle. Um,
So
the
many
rest of the
people.
dungeon Yeah, like the rest of the dungeon was all right. I still kind of groan when I get it in 70 roulette,
Yeah.
but just Yojimbo specifically, like they hyped him up in the trailer, and then like he's this kind of iconic like summon, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
and the fight just doesn't do him justice at all. It's like you pick up money and you kill dragon head ads, and then dodge a couple of circular AoEs, and that's it. Like it's a very bland fight for such an epic character, and like the music's not even that good. Like I don't know, they could have done better with that character. That's
Yeah,
pretty much my input on it.
yeah, I can agree absolutely that for Yojimbo specifically, which I don't know if either of you have any insight on this about why they even use dragon ads. Like, what was that even about? Does that even have
I
anything to do
have
with Yojimbo,
no
or
idea.
like if they
No,
use like like a shadow of like oh god, what is the dog's name? Oh my god, I'm gonna be so what is the
remember.
name? Huh?
I don't remember.
Oh, well, whatever. The point is they have like little like shadows of that, and they're like running around or something. If they involve that, like something involving Yojimbo, not just here are some glowy dragon
Daigoro.
head ads that just
Mm.
kind of like slowly move around and do line AoEs, but you're also
Daigoro.
supposed to pick up. Oh, sorry,
Daigoro.
Daigoro. There we go. Thank you. But yeah, like those dragon ads made no sense. I will agree that that they should have done a different music to give Yojimbo justice, considering the the king of the castle or the resident of the castle was paying him off to like stop the intruders or whatever.
Like
Um,
this type of enemy, they could have made a trial out of Yojimbo even.
well, no, no,
Like
no. If they had done to Yojimbo what they did with Genbu, I would have been happy. Genbu did an ultimate with his
mm,
water. No, think about it. No,
they didn't do Genbu justice either. No.
well, I didn't hate the Genbu fight. I mean, I understand why they made him the final boss in a dungeon, given the fact that like we only have so many primal extreme fights they can release at a time.
I didn't think of Genbu. He should have been number one. Holy.
Of
The,
what, of a fight you didn't like?
the fights that they just didn't do justice to. Like Genbu was this like he was the first step of doing Sky in 11. Like if you beat Genbu, that meant like okay, you're Sky ready.
I
And
mean,
it
I
just
guess
hurts so much that he's like this like
glorified dungeon boss.
yeah, he's not even glorified. He's just like oh, there's water turtle. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, yeah, he is, but and I do understand absolutely how you feel. So, well, it's okay. Well, I say I understand as someone who is has no prior knowledge to any of the four lords, never played 11. I thought it was adequate. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, you were right. Like for a primal, like we had Byakko, and that fight was great. But then
Byakko
Genbu
was
was
great.
this. Genbu was this. Like that's all we had for Genbu. Yeah, I can kind of agree if you compare the two, but I mean, for the introductory like auspice or whoever to the four lords, I thought it was adequate. But yeah, you're right. It did feel kind of like lackluster. Is that the word?
Yeah, I mean I concede that he is kind of the joke of the four lords or the joke of the sky gods, but
Mm,
still I would have loved to have like this huge arena like with this huge amount of HP and you had to like do certain things to like lower his defense or something. It just seems kind of bleh to me.
I can understand that, but for me, the last one that and this kind of goes back to the fact of like just my own experiences with progression and the fight mechanics, as well. I know a lot of people call them the Rock'em Sock'em robots because that's kind of like their model, and they just kind of stand there and just go like little motions. But it is Cuff of the Sun A6S
Mhm.
with in
That
order.
sounds right.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was Cuff. Whatever.
Yeah.
Blaster, Brawler, Swindler, and Vortexer. Now, in normal, it was actually not that bad of a fight. Like, it was actually kind of cool. You go from arena to arena and you fight, like, these four bosses in this one instance. And that was kind of cool to me
Yeah.
in normal. However, it's all one big fight.
1, you have to go back to the beginning, right?
It's like freaking Ultimate with you go back to Twintania, like that whole thing where you go so far into the fight, like you go to Swindler, who is a pain in the ass. It just the whole thing sucked, especially Blaster. You needed to silence a specific attack every time, or everyone got confused and would like bop each other over the head, and then like we all died. Like I'm not even kidding. I'm pretty sure it was not Mind Jack. That's that's Holocarnassus. What, whatever, something like that. Mind Blast. That's what it was. Anyways, no, like Blaster, I hated the first one. It was so annoying. Because you couldn't tell where like the ghost charges were kind of like charging towards. So you might get clipped. And it was just a lot of the mechanics in Savage were so stupid. Brawler was a little easier, I feel, but even then he was still kind of. I liked his mechanics a little bit better of the four. He was okay, and Swindler was stupid. You actually had to. Oh my god. Construct 7 all over again. You had to do the height mechanic along with the stack mechanic, like a healer or a tank or whoever gets targeted, right? With those like that little green circle around them, and they had like spinning orbs above their head, depending, you know, how many numbers it was. There was a proximity list you followed for how many people had to stack in it, and
Mhm.
it happened, at the same time. And like I said, that and just the whole thing, I hated A success through and through. Like it was just stupid. I hated it.
That's fair.
I don't know. Were there any other like fights that neither of you hated, or anything else that you felt the need to add? Or
No,
Mm-mm.
not for me at least.
well, well, I will say though that there were. I mean, I'm not. I'm not. I can speak for myself at least that there were a lot of fights, especially in the newer ones coming out. For example, Swallow's Compass. They've been improving with the kind of content that they've been releasing, slowly but surely. um, where especially specifically dungeons and boss fights, like
Yeah,
they are listening, they are learning, and even though there are some fights that we may personally hate, someone might love, and I do, and of course there are plenty of other things that didn't make the cut. So, alrighty, so I suppose that wraps it up
we
for
have
this
a
show. But
question.
yes,
I have a
Nomly,
question for you. I have a question
you
for
do.
you.
I know. I wasn't gonna wrap it up yet. I was gonna
Question just
go. Tell me. Question. Go.
it's a dumb one this time. You're gonna be like, the hell? Anyways, if a fork is made of gold, is it still considered silverware?
I hate you. I hate you so much.
I think they call it flatware.
Oh. Oh, great. See, Adara got you there.
Mhm. Mhm.
Why
Okay.
is it called flatware? Never mind. We're not gonna. um, I'm not
Well,
gonna get into that, but just know that that fork probably tastes disgusting because if it's made of, I'm just gonna say that.
How do you know what gold tastes like?
Not to mention, like, if it's anything's like frozen, it's gonna like bend out of shape every time.
That too.
Yeah.
If it's made of gold. Okay. Anyway, such a dumb question. I hate you. Okay. So, that just about wraps it up for this week's show. If you like this podcast and want to hear more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can get notified when we post a new episode. If there's anything you would like to hear us talk about, please leave a comment in the comment section below. Until next time.